Yeah, very interesting indeed. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time and input, and I loved that. And I love that sensor, by the way. That was really cool.
Welcome to Joomla London. We meet on the third Tuesday of every month. If you want to join us, the details are in the description below. This month we had a great talk from George Wilson. He's creator of the Joomla 4 API. It's a real game changer. And we've had a workshop straight after that teaching you guys how to use the Joomla 4 API. So I hope you enjoy the meeting.
Okay, so my name's Gary Barclay. I am a co-host of Joomla London, along with Phil and Owen, and do more of the work on the website and the social media. I run a small consultancy, web development consultancy, primarily focused with integrations and larger websites. Mostly Joomla. Next.
I'm Ayo. I am a digital marketing designer by trade. I've worked with Phil for many years, who's helped me develop a few websites of mine. I have very primitive understanding of development, but I'm always keen to come to these kind of meetings and to learn what is technologically available, as that's usually of interest in my field, which is technical anyway. But thank you. That's me, and my name's Ayo.
Thanks, Ayo. Owen?
Hi everyone, I'm Owen.
Are you still eating your burger? Should we give you another couple of minutes?
That's right, I'll go and then I'll carry on eating when the next person goes. I'm Owen. I came to Joomla London a few years ago and met Gary and Phil. And Gary's been pretty helpful to me, so has Phil. I recognise a few of you here, so you already know who I am. Some of the others will probably recognise me from the Facebook group, where I post a fair bit. I try and help people, and some of you might have even joined through the link from there that I posted out. I build Joomla websites. I have interest in Joomla business marketing, and I just try and solve business problems with Joomla. Next person.
Gary, do you want to call out names? Sorry, it'll be easier probably.
Yeah, I'm struggling to see the actual participants, so go for it.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm
Steve. We can only see your forehead.
Oh, really? Well, that now.
That's better.
Yeah, I've not been able to attend any of the Joomla London meetings for about a year now. Been busy doing work away from computers. I got involved with Joomla just by accident, really. I've created a few websites. I've got a few clients. My business is very part-time at the moment, so I think I'm probably at the maybe one would call the intermediate level when it comes to Joomla. So I'm slowly improving my knowledge.
Rome wasn't built in a day, Steve.
Oh, that's it.
Okay, Sean?
I'm Sean. I'm CEO and founder of a business called. Can you hear me all right? I'm getting a repeat on.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of echoing as well. The line's very poor.
I think someone's got. If everyone mutes their mic when they're not speaking, it's probably going to be there because I think it's reverb. Isn't it?
See if it's me.
Oh, I see. That's a good point. Good point.
Is that clearer? That's it. There we go. That's it. So I'm CEO and founder of a business called Law in Sport. I basically cause Phil a headache on a daily basis. I'm very typical of the clients that most of you probably work for, which is I say I want one thing and then a day later I say I want another thing. But I used to come to Joomla London when I first started out. It was super helpful to me. haven't been able to come or engage as much as I'd like to. So this is a bit of a sort of a guilty pleasure for me to have my wife look after the kids for this evening so I can join today. So yeah, I would say from a development perspective, novice, amateur, hacker, whatever you want to call it, fiddle with things way too much or forgetting to do backup. But yeah, keen to learn about all the stuff we're going to talk about tonight and meet everyone.
We need to get you signed up as lead developer for Joomla release. Alexander?
I just unmuted myself. My name is Alexander. I'm from Martinique. It's a French island from the Caribbean. I'm a Joomla specialist, so I'm intermediate to advanced Joomla developer. I do only Joomla, so and I'm working now on a project called Approximito. So it's a website, approximito.com. Shameless plug. So and I have now a focus on security, web app security, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
You want to? Do you want to put that website in the chat window so we can all check it out?
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, hi everyone.
It's working in progress, but I can do it.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're all clear, Andrew. Go, fire away.
Go on, Andrew.
Start again. Yeah, sorry. Hi. Yeah, my name's Andrew. My business website, which does essentially predominantly CPD and dentistry, is run with Joomla. So I've been coming to the meetings for some years now, and a very helpful bunch they are. And the banter is good too. And Sean, if you give Phil a headache, I'm sure that Owen and Gary will appreciate that.
As much as you can. If you could just update us every time you do that,
just keep
improve our days, that'd be great.
Make their day.
I'll take screenshots for you.
Let us know when he's really upset, just so that we can add some more.
If you ever want any ideas of things that we could teach you some stuff that'd really wind him up, you know, we're great button pushers.
No, the meetings are really good, and I'm not a developer. I do bits and pieces, but they're very useful to come to, and I find I'm often sitting in things and think, what are they talking about? And a couple of weeks later, that subject pops up, so it's worthwhile, and they're very helpful. So anyway, there we go. Good to be here.
Thanks, Andrew. Robert Kidd. You're muted, Robert. Can you unmute?
There you go. That's better. It's nice to hear such an enthusiastic bunch of people. Just to give you a bit of background, I moved to live in the UK on the 22nd of January this year. I lived in South Africa for a very long time. And while I was in South Africa, I was a member of a Rotary Club, and the guy there who put together a Joomla website said, all right, you're our webmaster now, see what you can do. And the biggest problem I had is there was nobody other than the developer of the various plugins and whatever who would give me assistance. And eventually I got a website up and running and backed up, and I made a couple of other websites for the church and for other Rotary clubs. So I particularly like Joomla because I cut my teeth on it. However, the biggest problem was there was nobody to speak to when I was out of the country. And it was so nice to see on Facebook that there's actually an active Joomla group. Back in South Africa, all the contacts I could come across seemed to be WordPress. And to me, WordPress doesn't quite have the flexibility that Joomla seems to have.
Okay, interesting. Thanks. The old WordPress thing comes up again and again, but we all have the same kind of idea about WordPress and its shortcomings over Joomla.
I've had to spend over, I think, about £750 on extensions for a client site recently, and it's not like doing a lot of functionality. In Joomla, I would have got most of it for free.
Oh, and could you ask that guy in the background just to stop moving around? He's distracting me.
He's a developer. He doesn't talk to people, Gary. Do you want Andrew Barber to have a go?
Unmute. Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew. I irritate Phil on a regular basis. Is Phil actually here? I could just see his name.
He looks like he is, but I think he's also on another meeting.
I hope he's here because I've got something a bit special for him. Because every time he introduces me to anyone, and he did this on the Joomla crash test team, which I've just joined the other day. Basically, I once built a site with Drupal, and he introduces me as a former reformed Drupal user. So, I just need to let you know I've actually got a football club annual general meeting starting in 15 minutes, so I'm going to duck out this evening. But I may come back later, depending on how quick that meeting is runs.
Oh well, thanks for popping in.
Yeah, always welcome to return, and we'll be trying to make a video of this anyway. So if you want to catch up on it, we'll try and put that somewhere. Ian Nelson.
I might leave the Drupal thing up just for Phil then.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, do. You're not reformed enough as far as I'm concerned.
he's
Do you know,
he's a closet Drupal user.
The only reason, when I was asked to build a website, I thought, well, I'll teach myself how to do this, sort of punk ethos. And I asked around, and I was suggested to look at either Drupal or Joomla. And I looked at the comparisons, and the only reason I chose Drupal for that first one was because I liked the logo. And I'm rather disappointed to see they've changed it. That is genuinely the only reason. And then I met Phil, and he said, no, yeah, big mistake. No.
He wasn't even talking about Joomla.
Yes, meeting Phil was the mistake.
Big mistake.
He's definitely not there, is he? He's not rising to the bait.
No. Thank God he's not there.
We'll keep trying, though. We'll keep trying.
He'll probably come on in a minute, guy. I've been listening to everything you've said. All right, Ian Nelson, do you wanna tell a bit about you and Joomla?
Yeah, sure. So Ian Nelson, I'm invading the London user group just because there isn't any other good ones around the UK at the moment to join in, or no virtual ones I can play with. So I've set up a Facebook group for a Midlands type one, but we've got to find some people to join it and set things going on that. So that's been sitting there for some time doing nothing really.
You want to put the link in the chat and we'll all follow it or like it? Or
yeah, sure. There's another chap I met at one of the Joomla UK days that was going to co-host it with me, so it's just trying to sort that out, but he's a good distance away. And virtual would work really well for us actually. So thanks for the invite. As usual, someone mentioned earlier that they've told their wife that they're on the call, and I've just remembered I haven't. So I might get shouted at or called very shortly to run away and have dinner or whatever exciting stuff she comes up with, or scream at me.
Yeah, we're waiting to get a video recording of physical abuse. That's what we're looking forward to.
I'm loving this insight into domestic bliss. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So me, a mixed bag really, I guess. Been playing around with Joomla for a number of years and know a number of people involved in it. Primary role is actually working for the NHS, trying to bring digital into the NHS, and have been for some time now. So that's 28 years working for the NHS. Primarily trying to drag them kicking and screaming away from fax machines that they're still using. Even the best trusts are still using fax machines, but also putting in some innovative technology to get them where most people in the country probably think they already are. And I'm quite impressed that we can report any daily numbers on COVID, and I don't think the basis of them is a little bit worrying. So that's kind of my day.
Done with Joomla?
I'm not sorry.
Is that done with Joomla? That reporting?
No. Pen and paper and fax machines. So history, I guess, is kind of core computer science originally, ex-Unix sysadmin from my job, and then I've switched over to being more paperwork and trying to help people on a higher level. Joomla wise was more a side thing of I did websites, started with HTML, and well done, Phil. Started with HTML and then used PHP Fusion, which is a UK CMS, for a while, until I got really frustrated with it that it was just it was very easy to build a very, very simple website, but not do anything with it. And someone introduced me to Joomla, so switched over, and I do run my very small sideline business of creating websites, but mostly for friends and family and small businesses that give me a bit of business, and I've got 3 a.m. in the morning to do them with. So yeah, just playing at it, website creation, not much development, well, no development, and lacking in, probably, as my colleague would call me, very de-skilled these days, technically.
Fair enough. Cool. Thank you. We've got Luca. You have joined us. Are you there, or are you struggling?
Oh, hi.
Tell us a bit about what you do with Joomla.
I used Joomla about 6 years ago. I use for hobbies, and now I'm interested in Joomla 4 API. I'm testing it, and on Saturday we have a demo of the use of Joomla 4 API with Arduino.
Hopefully George can teach you something then. We've got David K here. David, do you want to tell us a bit about you and how you use Joomla?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, great. It's the first time I've ever used Zoom. I just have a single website. Just always amazed with Joomla and some of the applications like a Kiba backup, etc. And always amazes me. Yeah, I'm using it for a while, just have a single site, and that's about it really. It's for a children's club that I run. So
very good. Well, we
nice
run
to
this.
see you back, David.
Hi. Hi, Gary. Was that Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't got a video on this, a camera on this PC, but it's a lot better than looking through my phone.
Okay, we've got another mystery character called WordPress on the line.
Hello, WordPress.
As if somebody renamed him. Phil, you there? You muted? Hello.
Yeah, we can't hear you through the face mask.
This is my COVID outfit.
We didn't get the memo about the dress code. Are you going up burglarizing?
That's my full COVID outfit. No, I'm in sympathy with Gary, so he's just losing it naturally.
Well, you are 108, so you've done well.
I know, I'm allowed. So I'm Phil. Started Joomla London years ago with some of these reprobates, and just coming from a production meeting. George should be joining us as well, and I think Marco's going to be joining us, or at least watching the recording. So no rude jokes about Marco. And yeah, so I do bugs and fun at home on Saturdays. So if anyone wants to come in, learn how to test, patch test, do all the bits and bobs, that would be great. We run it from 6 in the morning UK to about, well, 6, but it usually is about 8 o'clock in the evening. And when the Australians help out and the Americans, it actually runs from Friday night until almost into Sunday. So
great job, mate. You're doing
it's a very friendly atmosphere as well. We did a load of testing on Saturday and got a load of workflow stuff through. And there's now a new workflow, a blogs workflow in Joomla 4. So it's all really coming on well.
Not merged yet.
Very good. Right. So that brings us on
last
to
but not least,
Mr. George, who should need no introduction, but might do if you don't know Joomla. George has written the whole API on his own, possibly. Have you, George? I don't know. No? We'll just say
a few students.
And a few students. Okay, cool. But George has done a hell of a lot for Joomla, a lot of coding. It's been a release. Everything that breaks is his fault. So yeah, if you've got anything personally wrong with Joomla, George would like to give out his email address to everybody for your personal Joomla problem.
I'm running the campaign that George didn't break it.
You're running a George didn't break it campaign.
Yeah.
Right, George, I believe you've got a talk lined up for us.
Yeah, sure. So
I'm going to ask everybody, if you switch to speaker view, you'll get a clearer view of George rather than everyone.
And if everybody could mute, that'd be great.
Go
Except
for
you,
George.
George. You can unmute.
Cool. So just to kind of get a feel, how many of you guys have kind of tested or tried anything to do with web services yet in J4?
I have.
I have.
There's a few yeses, but mostly no's. So that's fine. That's a good place to start. Cool. So for those of you who we'll start with kind of the basics. So web services are largely a way for a computer communication technique more than anything else. So it allows your components to talk with each other and for websites to talk with each other. And you can imagine how this might be useful already, I'm sure. There's lots of different things. I think probably the best website is that a lot of these kind of amalgamation of events websites will use APIs to scrape events from other websites that they get data from. So they'll go around and pull down APIs of whatever, all the park cleaning events happening in London and amalgamate it all on your nice how I can help websites in my local area. Trying to pull out random examples here. So yeah, so that's what web services are. So in terms of Joomla, obviously, I guess it's easy to see that that can benefit Joomla. There's a lot of websites that interact with other websites these days. There's a lot of mobile apps where you've got communication between your mobile device and your Joomla server. There's a lot of different ways that you can utilize web services within Joomla. Yeah, so that's kind of what the motivation for bringing web services into Joomla is. There's this ability to open up Joomla to significantly more areas. Yeah. In terms of what we've got, so J4 is shipping with some basic web services to allow you to do your kind of creation, read, update, deletes of resources. The intention as time goes on is to basically move to a point where there is a web service that will cover every action that you can do within the user interface. So some sort of kind of, some people call that even say web service first to describe these kinds of sites where you basically have a web service for everything. But it ultimately just means that you can trigger any action. And obviously in things like mobile apps, this is useful. Yeah. So that's kind of a high level overview of what we're doing, of what we've got in Joomla at the moment. So probably the other thing to touch on before I start to kind of walk around some of these things is to point out kind of what the default out-the-box Joomla web services can do. If you kind of think about it, there's two sorts of web services within Joomla. You've got, you're going to have web services that allow you to do kind of private things. So maybe that's submitting data between components, or your maybe MailChimp has a callback to your site or something like that. And these kinds of things where you're just going to allow, you basically just have a web service that allows you to do anything. So all these different options in your articles you can submit. You also might want to have public web services that are available for your users of your sites to call. So I don't know, anybody can, what's a good example? I don't know, maybe you have an event tail and you allow the public to submit events into your website. You may want to have a web service that also allows them to do this. So every time that they create something on their website, it automatically creates a web service request to your website to showcase their event. These kinds of things are more tricky. Oh, another good example, I guess, is mobile apps and that development and that kind of thing. So you don't want to you don't want to expose everything. You want to expose a limited set of resources. So for example, you're only going to allow them to, I don't know, say you're not using categories at all. You don't necessarily want everybody to submit a category ID of 1 in every web service request, because that's that your uncategorized category, because you're not using categories. Like you don't want to, you want this nice kind of clean, easy to understand endpoint for people to submit their data. And that's not something that Joomla can handle out the box, because we don't know what you are and you aren't using on your website. So what Joomla can build is a all-encompassing web service that covers everything, and then allow you some sort of pluggable architecture to allow you to build custom endpoints for your customers if you're using a limited set of resources. And I think that's kind of quite an important distinction to make, that you know, what we can do is we can give you this ability to create an article, but if you're not using 80% of content and you literally just want to have people submit a title and a body of data, and that's it, maybe some tags for your blog, then you're probably going to have to do a little bit of work on top of that as well, just to restrict the data and set some sensible defaults and that kind of thing. All of this is there, but it's going to kind of form the backdrop for what we're doing, because you're going to see a lot of, I guess, sensitive data in some of these web services. And you've got to remember that this is because by default, we expose everything. And it's down to you if you're going to show this to untrusted customers to make sure that you're not, you're giving sensible public web services to those people. Okay, so.
Can I ask a question, George?
Yeah.
So how is this? How are you going to control that access? Is that just down to permissions, or is that going to be through plugins, or is it going to be additional
so Joomla's
code?
ACL works. So Joomla's ACL works out of the box with all these web services anyway.
Yeah.
So every action you can do is still going to be controlled by a web service. Sorry, it's still going to be controlled by Joomla's ACL. Sorry.
Yeah.
So everything, you know, you still can't do things, but what you can do is return extra data. You can, so there is a default ACL check, which is basically at the level of, am I authenticated to access the API outright? By default in Joomla 4, that level is going to be super admin only. And the reason for that is basically we're introducing a new access point into Joomla. It is, as with all things where you're adding a new thing, there is a relative level of risk with that. And so for now, we're going to say super admin access only. As time goes on, I fully expect that we'll start to lower the high level, can you use the web service access check down as we gain more confidence with people's use of the API. It's just trying to be sane. And obviously you can also then add permission checks on individual endpoints if you so wish, that you build yourself. That's also totally fine.
And is that in a plugin architecture, is it?
So kind of. So the way that the plugins work is that routes are added to your API. What that doesn't do is the permission checks. So the permission checks are down to you, because you're still going to be redirecting to a component. So it's the component's job to do the ACL checks, not the plugin that's just dealing with adding routes and deleting routes. Does that make sense? Gary's got no camera on, so I hear nothing, but Owen's nodding, so I'll pretend it's fine. Cool.
It's fine.
So I'm gonna share my screen and we'll have a look. So out the box, Joomla 4 install, which I have wiped for the purposes of this demo. We'll just set some stuff up. Go away. It works. have so many databases stacked on top of each other half the time this fails. I have to go nuke all my databases. Less than half the time, actually. Seems very sad, doesn't it? Maybe it's time to go. Maybe I should have nuked the databases before I did this. Really? Bear with me. What have I done? I know what I've done. I need to delete cookies. Too many cookies.
Phil has got some set up, George, if you prefer to use one of them. Assume that's all right, Phil.
Okay, let's try again.
I think it's stuck.
Yeah, I think I had too many cookies.
This is making me feel reassured. I'm not the only person who deals with these topics.
No clue if this worked. Let's find out. Apparently I had over 100 cookies, which is too much for Chrome to handle. That's just how many times I have to restart. I kind of rebuild this website. I'm gonna drop all the tables and try again, just to make sure I've got a clean install. Otherwise, I risk doing bad demos. Lesson learned: don't reinstall Joomla too many times. Let's kill that and let's start again.
So for everyone watching, this is the new Joomla 4 install, which is a little bit quicker than the previous one.
You're super quiet, Owen. Like super quiet.
That's because my mic's up in here. Everyone watching, this is a new Joomla 4 install, so you'll notice that it's a little bit quicker than it used to be. Even quicker when George does it, I'm sure. Or maybe not if he hangs again.
Nah, not in the hang this time. I don't think. I hope not. If it is, I broke something.
Says he's been eating too many cookies.
Has anyone tried the new Drupal?
What did I break?
I did a big laugh at that.
George, can we give you a login to Phil's ones that are already set up?
That's fine. I'll pretend it's all working out the box. It's probably fine.
I actually like watching the debug side of things because you learn so much.
Yes.
I think the thing is I get a database and I get a configuration file, so I think it's working. Weird. Whatever. I'll come back to it later.
Are you using one of them Macs, George?
Yeah, I'm using a very old Mac, so it's probably why. Is this thing just dead or something? What's wrong with this? So slow. Maybe it's just Zoom being really slow. Like my laptop's like at snail speed anyway. This is localhost. This is normally like blazing. One sec, let me close down some memory. Yeah, okay.
Possibly all those tabs are taking up some memory, George.
Maybe. Apparently I'm using up 9 gigs of my 8 gig memory.
Fantastic.
Probably not helpful.
We should all chip together and get you some new memory. get you an upgrade to 16.
Well, then it'll use 17 though.
Exactly.
What you need is I need this one. This one is my work laptop. It's got 32.
All right, there you go. Oh, I see what's going on.
What I need.
We're second rate. We're second rate. You haven't pulled out the.
I'm second rate. This one's bought for me by my office. I've got a small pile of them around here. Right, what am I doing? So, okay, so J4 admin, we're going to install testing sample data so that we can have a go around. This comes with any nightly build, but it won't come with the stable betas or anything like that. This is just, it creates something of everything so that we can test, hopefully when things break, and if associations between things break, it's not intended for production sites. But if you go to the nightly page, which is developer.joomla.org/nightlies, then nightly builds.html. Then you can always download the bleeding edge from Git and install it like it's a regular new site. And that means, yeah, you're always on the latest version pretty much. The only thing is there's obviously no upgrade path between nightlies. Occasionally things will break if we create and delete things. Happens rarely, but it does happen from time to time. But yeah, if you do fresh installs, you can always download the latest and greatest beyond just the stable or kind of semi-stable betas. So coming back to this, our sample data has been installed. So we now have loads and loads of articles in lots of funky configurations. Yeah, so we've got loads of data. So let's start with simple stuff. So at the moment we have a list of articles here. So how do we, okay, first of all, the first thing we need to do is enable web services. I shouldn't get ahead of myself. So we'll go to plugins. And first of all, note that our API authentication is enabled by default. That's the Joomla token. This is the secure way of doing things. And there is an unsecure way of doing things to be quick and dirty here if you want to do local debugging. But we're responsible people. If we look in the plugins for web services, and there's a space, which I always forget about, then you'll see there's a big list of plugins here which provide all these different web services to your site by default. So this represents pretty much every extension in Joomla at this point. I think the only things missing is workflows.
Do you want to click into one of them, George, so we can see what's inside?
There are no options, I don't think. Yeah, there's no options. It's there or it's not. I mean, we can probably start to configure things like whether you expose like the categories endpoints or not, but right now it's just, it adds everything. And the plugin itself is horrendously simple. There's literally like 50 lines to each plugin. It just drops, so it just registers basically for this URL, go to this component, for this URL, go to this component. Yeah. So we've checked that we've got everything enabled. That's good. And now we need to go to me. And if I look at my user account, there's an API token field here. I don't have a token yet, so I save my profile to generate myself my token. And this token here is what I need to authenticate. This will be different for every user on your site, and it can be reset at any time. Be careful if you are a super admin. Your super admin credentials obviously have access to everything, so treat it like it is a password. It is yours, it's not to be shared.
So we've got any best practices here, George? Would you recommend creating a user for each application that you're going to give access to the API rather than attaching it to users?
That's something very standard that people tend to do, yeah. So it kind of depends what you want to do. Joomla's out-the-box authentication method is largely based around being user-centric. So your tokens are associated with users. When you start to move to an application level, there's a web service authentication system called OAuth, but it's quite a bit more complicated. You generally have to go through a couple of steps. So out the box, we've decided not to run with that. I fully expect that in the extension ecosystem that there will be people providing this as a extension. So instead of thinking about applications, I'd encourage you to think for the API token here as just being, it represents a user. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to do some dodgy stuff like that, then probably, yeah, one user per application is best, but it probably means that this particular authentication system isn't for you anyway. And you probably should be looking to use an OAuth system from the marketplace. And I guarantee you that people come up with these extensions because I know that they already exist in the wild. It's just a matter of trying to build something that's simple enough for most people who just want some basic stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So today, what I'm going to use to do some demos, something called Postman. I don't know how many people have come across Postman, but it's a nice little GUI that makes web services fairly easy. You can download it from, it's free. There's a paid version, which I have never used because I'm a terrible person and don't contribute back. But yeah, you can go to postman.com and download the free version. And it's really nice out of the box on its own. There's certain features you get when you move to Pro, but I have actually paid for a version in my professional capacity outside of Joomla, but yeah, for the purposes of doing testing in Joomla, there's nothing I need. Out the box is fine. So I've got some stuff set up here, so I'll take you through it. I've created some web services here, or defined some web services. I've used variables because it makes it easier to export for people. I'll show you how they work in a minute, and I've grouped them into categories for components. These are just some basic ones I've done. I think there are more complete versions by Alexander, who's in the call here. I know he has a Git repo that has, I think, a full list of them in. If I look at my settings here, you'll see that I've set up one variable which basically just maps my base URL for my Joomla site, localhost, Joomla CMS. This just means that when I export it, I don't have to tell people to go through every request and change it. It's just in one place. They have to change their URL to point to their Joomla site. And here in the authorization section, I'm going to hit bearer token because that's what Joomla's giving me. And I will paste in my bearer token here. And hit update. And so for a basic out-the-box request, I don't know what I changed. That's unfortunate. Okay, for my basic out-the-box web service, I'm going to call /API, which is the root where Joomla's API exists. You version all your web services, their version, just like your application would be. Say v1. I'm accessing some content related endpoints, and specifically I'm looking for articles. If I wanted to get an individual article, I then specify the article ID as an extra parameter. So you see I've got a /1 here. And that's kind of the basic structure of Joomla's web services. Yeah, so everything's versioned, and you can bear in mind that across J4's lifetime, especially depending on how things go, there might always be a time where we're going to have maybe v1 and v2. We can have multiple versions of the web services live in a single version of Joomla. We just will always guarantee that we'll support all the majors that we've produced until the end. Because again, this is new. As time goes on, you won't expect there to be many major versions, but we have to bear in mind that we're creating a new thing here, and there's every possibility that we may not get it 100% right first time around, although we're doing our best, obviously. So if I send off this web service, oh, sorry, I should show you. So I have specifically some headers here. That's what I was changing. I was trying to test this the other day. Okay. Oh my God, my laptop's so slow with Zoom. Okay, yeah, I need to change all of these. Right, so I don't have SEF turned on at the moment, so I had to put it back in index.php. I was testing the SEF stuff the other week, that's why. Okay, so we sent one header which said accept application BMD API plus JSON. What this says is I want to get back basically in a specific format my data. And that format is what Joomla is going to ship it out the box, and it's called JSON API. JSON API is basically just a way of structuring the JSON. We've decided to use this out the box. It's also what Drupal uses out the box, although they picked theirs after we picked it, even though they released first. There's a long discussion about why we chose to use this, but it's all documented. this or something. Close. What was it? Get it wrong. There we go. Apparently I can't spell the repo name. Okay, so if you're interested in why we picked Joomla Web Services, we wrote a detailed breakdown here of all the reasons and why we picked JSON API here, which I will not go into too much depth on, but you can find it on joomlaprojects.github.io/gslog19 web services. So Joomla does JSON API, so we're saying that we want JSON API. If you want to, if you start to go into kind of large corporate space or something like that, where there is already web services that have a certain format, there is nothing that stops you using those. Joomla does full content negotiation, which basically means that if you say, I want XML output, as long as you implement it, you can do it. So if I say application, I can't remember what the XML format is, but is it text/XML, I think? Let's try it. Hopefully this won't give me anything back, otherwise I'll have screwed everything up. My God, my website is so slow. Yeah. So Joomla says it basically failed to give any sane response format back. It will only accept basically JSON, which is a proxy to the JSON request I showed you earlier, or specifically JSON API. Okay, it doesn't even match that anymore, whatever. But it will want you to have BND API plus JSON. It's weird. I'm sure it should work for JSON. Whatever. You can, as I say, you can add any extra content types you want, but just out of the box, we're doing JSON API. So yeah, that gives you plug and play on content types too. No, it doesn't work for JSON. That's why JSON actually maps to Joomla's actual JSON type. That makes more sense. Cool. So yeah, that's what accept header does. It tells Joomla what kind of web service you want back. It will also work with language preferences. So you can say accept language and specify a language. So as you can see, we've now got a nice, pretty JSON thing. It gives links to pages. So you can see this is the current page we're on. This will be the next page in the pagination, and this will be the last page in the pagination of articles. So you can immediately see that Joomla is trying to promote you to go to kind of useful pages that you might use if you're building a website with this data. As time goes on, I think we'll see more of these kinds of links showing. Then we've got our data, which is of type article. It has this ID and these properties associated with it. So that's the alias of the content type, the text of your article, tags associated with there aren't any in this case, the language, the created date, the state, etc. It also shows relationships. So it says there is a category relationship which maps to categories ID 25, and there's an author relationship which maps to user 748. This will be the super admin user. It's telling you that is the author, and the category is the category 25. I can also go and then get web service requests on those endpoints too to find out more about that category. And this is just largely, aside from that, a big list of things. Oh, and at the end, it also tells you how many pages of data there are in the meta section. So these are the main kind of top level properties. You've got meta, you've got data, and you've got links. And I guess those things are relatively intuitive, whether you've used web services or not. So you can already kind of see here, you've got the building blocks for how a website kind of gets built. You've got kind of links to related things. You've got data that you're displaying, and you've got kind of meta information. And you could believe that I could build, if I wanted to, this backend page here, this bot table of data here, I could build exactly with the data in that web service if I wanted to. And you can imagine that then on a mobile, I could do exactly the same thing. I could, on a mobile device, get this list and build a mobile app, but then display the table in a similar way. And this is kind of the root of web services. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of the simplest things that web services do. It can display a list of articles. It can then drill down and get individual articles. So here's our individual article, and you can see it's got all the information. And again, it displays its relationships with other pieces of data. Yeah, so I think that's the easiest start point. So I think we'll move on and kind of look at kind of the next level. So I guess in Joomla, you've got your articles. I can get an individual article, which will help me shape edit views and that kind of thing. So before we look at something else, we're just going to have a look at one last thing, which is filtering of data, because that's the other thing you're going to typically do. Is you're going to want to say, I want to filter by events in the next week, or I want to look at data in a certain place. So we'll say that I need to find a category. Categories you want to filter by? Say content modules, 25. That'd be too easy. So we'll say category equals 25. I need to be careful. I want to say filter category equals 25. Oops. No, I didn't. Let's try that. Live demos are so exciting. Never know whether it's going to work or not. Okay, so yeah, okay, this actually did work. Nice. So you see, we've only got one page of data now. We've only got a handful of articles here. So you can see we've basically successfully filtered by our chosen category, which was the content modules, by saying we're going to specify a filter with the property category, and Joomla supports filtering by category, author, state, language, and also just a general search phrase. So all the kind of things, again, that you'd get in your filter options box here, you can filter by. So again, there's the API does all this stuff. Yeah, okay, so let's have a look at creating articles. So as I guess that's the other thing is that you might want to be able to create your blog posts on the phone or something like that. So
George, Gary's just put a question in the chat saying, can you stack the filters on top of each other? Are they and filters or all filters?
They're and filters.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, George. I thought you were on a bit of a roll, so I just put a question in the chat.
That's fine, don't worry. It's fine to interrupt. Don't worry about it. So they're and filters, just like they are in the user interface. So I can say filter search. I want to search for the string tags, and that does the same kind of job it does in Joomla. So I'm hoping to only get this article back, and yeah. No, I've got two. Okay, I've got similar tags and popular tags in my content articles. Makes sense. So I've reduced myself from 4 articles down to 1, and these two stack together. And I assume if I uncheck this, yeah.
Do you think there might be any logic in those, George, like adding in not and not filter? Or is that just too far or a step too far?
You can do it, but Joomla didn't have that functionality out of the box, so I haven't tried to force it in.
Right, okay.
this shares the same logic with the administrator's search tools view.
Yeah.
So what you can do in administrator search tools, you can do here and vice versa.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Makes it easy to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. As time goes on, we can start to make these things more complicated. So you've got to always remember that all these knots and the way you combine all these filters together makes increasingly more complicated database queries, which take longer to return data.
Yeah.
If you're not optimizing your database with these queries, it starts to get long if you've got large sites. Yeah. Okay, so we'll look at creating articles queue for completeness. So here we're going to say two things. So first of all, we've got we're going to have our content type, which specifies the format that we're going to send data to the server, because when we're creating stuff, we're actually going to start sending data to the server. And obviously, we're still saying all we want back is your JSON API stuff. So we'll look at the body we're going to send. We're going to send a title, category ID, article text, language. Make sure I'm specifying a valid category ID. I am. So this will go into uncategorized, and just really the basics. And one sec, I'll change this to something more relevant and send this. God, it's so slow. Okay, so Joomla sends me back the information on my newly created article. For those who are wondering, it comes back with, oh, it doesn't show it. Oh, it does. So I get a status code of 200, which means it got created. And if I go to my list of articles, you can see that I now have a Joomla user group test article here, which I can then unpublish and publish as I see fit. And of course, vice versa, I can go get all the information on this article. It's got an ID of 70, so I can go back here and get all the information that I want on that. So here's my article, and you can see it's still got this, it's got all the properties associated, and created date, text, all this kind of stuff, relationships.
So in preparation for this, George, we were playing around with the API last night, and one of the things we noticed was when we tried to update an article, jump in if I'm getting this wrong, Owen, it was either update or create an article, you had to put in the category ID, but it wouldn't allow you to use a category ID that was already there. It would only allow you to create a new category. Is that a bug you know about?
Yeah, I know about that one. That's why I've got the category ID specified here.
Okay.
Yeah, I know about it. It isn't that important to me to fix out of all the different bugs we've got in web services.
Okay.
At some point it'll get fixed. I'm
reassuring.
sure. Basically, the reason is it still uses the same Joomla's out the box data filtering. It's largely built with web requests, so every time you update an article, you're still effectively submitting a form that contains all the information associated. And so because this is still using the same filtering, because we're trying to keep things as secure as possible rather than rebuilding filtering out the box, you're effectively missing a required property, so it fails. I think going forward, we're going to have to find a way to preload the article and merge in the updates. But yeah, we don't have that yet. So at the moment, yeah, you have to specify all the required fields every time you're updating, even if they're not changing. That will change. think this is patched now as well. Always nervy because I didn't update these very much.
So I'm just checking that this applies to core and not, will it apply also to this? Is it CCKs like Zoo and stuff like that? Is that for the marketplace to provide?
So,
or for them to provide?
The answer is it depends on each CCK, how they're doing their integrations. We're trying to throw all the plugin events you throw in the normal events to allow people to modify the forms. But absolutely, it does depend. And there's kind of also no right way of doing it because some things are built specifically for like web requests. There's no point in a custom field which asks you what color do you want to display the article title in. Like you don't want to display, I don't know, what's the best way of explaining this? Not everything needs to be output that these CCKs add.
Yeah, you want it to strip it down. Yeah, they had a lot of stuff in. Yeah.
So I mean, to give you, Joomla's custom fields is supported out the box, and it didn't require any real work to do it. But the one thing we did have to be careful of was how we return data from custom fields, because, for example, out the box, the media custom field renders an image tag, which is obviously useless in a JSON request. What you want is the URL to the image, the public URL to the image. And so we had to play around with custom fields to actually return contextually useful things, depending on whether you're in a web service or whether you're in a HTML view. And it might well be that these CCKs will need similar things to actually get them at a point where this data is actually useful. And however, largely I would expect them to work. Whether it's useful information they're outputting is a different story.
And then that's sorry for asking some question, but the next one was you mentioned load on the server, right? With all the callbacks and stuff. What's the sort of limitations on that? Because presumably, if this is as good as you hope it will be by the time it finishes, and obviously providing you've got all the testing done and everything else that goes along with it, what do you have to consider in terms of when you're doing these things? Obviously, we want to strip it down to the, as you were saying, to the important information. But say, for example, you run like us, a quite relatively popular website, quite a big website, and then we were to use something like this to push and pull content to either a service that we want people to consume in a different way to related people, whatever it is, or for people submitting content to us. What is the consideration that we would need to? Is there
I mean,
any?
There's nothing too serious. So ultimately, this literally uses the same code that's used in the administrator already.
Okay.
So it's nothing too crazy, but I'm also warning that if you start to add in lots of pretty functionality on top, you start to end up on slippery slopes. And it's not like Joomla's admin interface is the most performant thing ever for all websites. There are definitely times when it could do better. Especially when you start to implement loads of ACL groups, it's well known that it kind of doesn't cope particularly great. It's still the same limitations with all Joomla things. In moderation, you're good. If you start to do stupidly crazy, whatever, scaling operations, then you actually you're going to need to do customization to the stuff that we're giving you to suit your specific use case. It's, as with all things Joomla, it's kind of for your 80-90% use case. It's not for the niche 20%.
Great.
Am I right in thinking, George, am I right in thinking that CDN, it wouldn't be, because this is mainly database requests, it wouldn't be improved or enhanced or supported by CDN. So in some aspects of trying to make a website performant like Sean's, which relies heavily on CDN and caching and that kind of thing, the API wouldn't benefit from any of those, and all the access will be direct to the server, the core server. Is that right? So say, for example, Sean
Not
made
necessarily.
an app.
You can.
Could I come in on that?
Very situationally, you can cache web service responses.
Yeah, you can, and also with PHP 7.4, there's going to be more caching in the PHP. So the same requests, I think, in theory, could be served effectively from cache.
Really?
Yeah, there's an op cache, new op cache in 7.4.
Yeah. 7.4's got just in time. Loads of nice features. So that would be one of the features. The other thing is it gives you the ability to do new architectures, which I've been playing around with and chatting to, I mentioned slightly to you, Gary, this afternoon, whereby you can have like a staging server where you do all the work and you prepare it and you could change templates and have a look. And then you could use the web service to push the final products to the server, which is purely just a front-end server. Pushing the articles in. You don't really use it for creating the articles. So you could literally have a staging and then a production front end. And that would lower the load because you wouldn't be messing around, uploading big pictures, all that sort of thing. You'd have the whole ability to respin it up and push it out again if you needed to. So there's some really nice architectures that web services give you to build out and make new. I mean, in theory, I know I haven't thought it through, horrendous, but you could almost have different databases with the ACL requests that were serving it, depending on if you were this or if you were that. So you would effectively then be able to serve static content through an ACL request that was specific to the ACL group.
So in relation to Sean's site, what's the biggest load on the server from the activity that goes on Sean's site? Is it posting content or is it delivering content?
My cock ops.
I can't wait, no comment there. It's an interesting one. There's certainly a lot we could do. I mean, that's a lot of it is zoo based, and as we know, literally today, that's one of the things I was going to mention. They brought out Utheme Pro 2.1, and the end thing after their 10-minute video is, and Zoo 4 is on its way. So, you know, there's a lot in that respect. I think Zoo is not bad speed-wise, because it actually does leverage some caching and server-side caching. So yeah.
Yeah, it stores a lot of its content in JSON in tables, doesn't it?
It is JSON, yeah, stored as JSON. Yeah. I mean, we saw with what they did with Intech Joomla, where they used Joomla as the back end and they built an Angular front end, and it is lightning fast. So again, the web services give you that ability to separate your back and your front end and push to a totally different front end. See, George was nodding on that one. I mean, it was pretty impressive what they were doing. And one of the comments I remember,
you can build headless CMSs for sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they actually said that they'd looked at your API and said it was a good API.
Yeah, they probably hadn't looked hard enough.
They probably looked at the students' bits.
Yeah, no, they seemed okay with it, which was good. Because they're one of the bigger houses.
Push that
So
compliment down a
if they're happy.
So, and you saying, is that Tech Joomla? Did you say was that one?
Yeah, that was Tech Joomla. Ashwood, because they did the Indian registration site, which was massive.
Yeah, they build some serious scaling websites. Not all of them were Joomla, but they built some serious scaling websites. So if they're happy, then I'm kind of happy from that perspective. Because it's not just about scaling, right? It's also about making sure the functionality is there. It means I've covered like the high end, and I'm pretty sure I've covered the low end. So, because yeah, until people start using, like ultimately the thing with the web services, until people start using it with Angular, it's very hard to build. Professionally, I was maintaining web services for a couple of years outside of Joomla, and when you try and build it up front and you try and build these, modular microservices that everyone talks about, it's very different to when people come in and they just want to use the most easy to use chain together call in the world, just so they have to do that one call to your server and never have to touch it again. Theory and practice are kind of quite different things. Yeah. But I'm pretty happy with what we built. I think it's going to be pretty good for kind of out-the-box work that most people are going to use it for. I mean, I get it doesn't quite answer your question in terms of performance. I can't point at one specific thing that I'd say will be most performant, but of course, as with all things, you can definitely cache database requests. Of course, you can always choose to cache. You can choose to cache output sometimes. Situationally, it very much depends on your use case. But for example, if you're very confident that articles, once they're published, are never changing, you can actually cache your output and say, for all my articles that are published, cache for 10 minutes or something. And just actually cache the entire output of the page. Never make the request to the database if that's an actual concern.
Thank you.
I mean, that's more than what Joomla can probably. I don't know if Joomla can do much more out the box, but I'm trying to think of things generally even outside of Joomla. Cool. So, I mean, that gives you an idea of content. So I'm sure you can think of all the kind of things about articles and that kind of thing. But when I said it covers everything, I kind of really meant it. So I think what I was going to do is show you the scary stuff, let's say. So let's try and get some serious data. This will work. Damn it. Okay, what's that? Oh, it's the endpoint name. I always forget. That's what I was missing. So these are all the different options. I don't know why this has a hard-coded ID. Okay, whatever. Why is this ID 212? I have no clue. I don't know, I'd probably break something.
Well, I think at this point, George, we've probably got enough to take what you've given us into some workshops later on.
Yeah, for sure. So what I was going to say anyways is that these are your global configuration options. So, and that does include down to the level of your database connections.
Wow.
That certainly is scary.
That is scary.
You can disable the global config endpoint, but my point is that, you know, if you wanted to set, you know, some people might want to set their site off, you know, set their site offline at some specific thing in an automated way and their offline message, and that's absolutely possible.
Or you can have a backup database and flip that over.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can imagine restoring a site and then using the API to change the endpoint for the database.
Wow.
I probably doesn't work in theory because your user authentication will fail because it won't be able to validate your token against the database. But you know, those kinds of concepts. If you're migrating your site to a fresh database server or something like that, all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, Joomla gives you the ability to do everything out of the box. But of course, it's also scary, and this is why, at least to start with, we're saying super admins only, and then we'll slowly relax that as minor versions come out, and we, you know, people battle test this, do their own internal security audits, as I'm sure bigger companies will want to do, and then we can start to lower the requirements for usage. But absolutely, you know, the intention is that you can build your public APIs and stuff as well. But yeah, you can really get everything out.
Very good. I mean, very good and very scary. But yeah, that's really, really insightful, George. We had to play around with it, but you still showed us some stuff that we probably hadn't noticed or weren't aware of.
Again,
So
I think with them with workflows in Joomla 4, I think this is going to be another killer app.
I hope so.
Well done,
I think
George.
workflows and this are probably the two biggest features.
yeah, this is amazing. I could have been using this years ago. It's great. Our next part of the meeting we've got scheduled as what is it? Talking about news or something? Is it, Gary? We're going to have a quick break to talk about news. I think we'll give Phil a chance to talk as it's his meetup, really. And then afterwards we have a workshop. So if anyone wants to join in the workshop, download Postman at postman.com. I'll put it in the chat as well. And then we'll do a little code along. Well, we'll try to. We'll see if it works. We'll do a code along and see if you guys can use the API like George has just done. And using it yourself will probably give you a bit more of an insight of how it works.
Is this like
Up to you,
tech
Phil.
karaoke? Is this what this is the karaoke? Is it?
If everybody get their laptop and sit in the passenger seat of a car, we'll drive you around and do carpool coding.
You got any news for us, Phil? You want to tell us about this haircut?
Apart from the haircut, I just got fed up on Sunday and shaved it all off. Actually, those who've been around Joomla London a long time will actually remember that this is how I used to be. So what's happened? A beta's come out. So Joomla.
Sorry, can I just thank George for his talk before we move on to something else? Thanks, George.
Thanks, George.
You guys.
Well, so the news is George brought out Beta 4, which was really good, actually. We've been doing some testing and we're working on Dev 2 at the moment. If anyone wants to play with it, Saturdays where there's been quite a lot of testing done and it's all coming along nicely. On Saturday, Nicola announced that there were 665 pull requests, tracker issues in the tracker, only one more for the devil's number, but we soon broke through that. But it's been hovering around. It's
669 actually, but don't worry about it.
How many now?
669.
669, okay.
I added one yesterday, so that helps.
Great. But loads of fixes as well. So that's good. The last release, which was 2 weeks ago, so right in the middle of between the two Joomla Londons, that seemed to go very well. There was no major issues with that one. And the CMS release team has been becoming more and more active, and we've got some new members joined as well. Even an ex-Drupal person. He's not going to speak.
He's had to go to another meeting. He might return in a bit.
Okay. And what else? Utheme brought out, basically had a big push on WordPress, which then freed them up to go for Zoo and other things. So I went off Utheme Pro, as a lot know, when Utheme Pro first came out because of the way they were storing data and various other things they were doing. Utheme Pro 2, I'm really impressed with. It does an awful lot of really interesting dynamic stuff using custom fields. So it really takes custom fields to a new level. And the latest one that they brought out today allows conditions on the way that you're showing the data. So it's really nice. So if you click on a module that happens to be to do with a specific thing, like your websites that are commerce or portfolio or whatever, then other modules on that page could disappear or appear according to what you select. So it's very, very dynamic, really impressive. What else has happened? I don't think there's anything other major things that have gone on. When you come on to the testing, I did do a little coding last night and this morning, showed Gary. So I've actually got a example of a Joomla 3 site pushing from a form to a Joomla 4 site using the API to make articles on the Joomla 4 site. So, and I can show the coding for that. It's not many lines at all.
Very cool. Very cool.
So back to Owen.
Okay, Gary, you got any news or anything to add? He's on mute. Probably for the best.
Not from me.
So do we want to do the workshop? Let me see. Is everybody doing the workshop? Who is and isn't doing the workshop? Put your hand up or type in the chat or something if you're doing the workshop. Yeah, well, I saw one hand. There's a lot of black screens there, so if you raised your hand without your webcam on, I didn't see it. Well, look, guys, we've said we're doing it, so we're going to go through it. Phil, do you want me to do it, or do you want to take control and share your screen?
No, you and Gary did it last night. I'm happy for you guys to go through it, and then I can show a little bit of code and do live from one site to another.
Okay, cool.
I think we've also got Luca has got some examples on that we could use as well, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, the expert, along as well as George. See you later, Io. Thanks for coming. I've missed him, haven't I? Okay, cool. So I'll show you my screen. I'll share with you, I suppose. So if you're following along, open your Postman. So here's my Postman. Look, guys, if I go too quickly or you have a question, just unmute yourselves and shout it out because I can't see you all when I'm doing
Owen,
this.
I was going to suggest that you show them where to get Postman and how to set it up to this point.
This is just install Postman at this point. We've told them to download link. I don't know. Is it worth showing people?
Giving them a link in the chat.
Thanks for coming, Robert. Good to have you here. We have one every month if you want to come. Does anybody not know how to install Postman? Unmute and tell me. Right, cool. Then I'm not going to do that. Right, so if you go to New, and then you go to Request. So shout if I go too quick on anything. The request name, we call it Get List of Articles for this one. I'm not going to do a description, and you do need to create a collection, so I will do Joomla for API test. So I know type quite quickly, but it doesn't really matter what you type as long as there's something there. And then I'm going to create this collection, and then I'm going to save it. We should probably share the URL for the endpoints with you, so let me just grab that and put that in the chat. A second. So I've lost it. Where have I put it? Oh, here it is. I'll share that screen for you quickly so you can sort of understand where I'm getting the information from. Where's my meeting controls gone? Right, so I'm on, this is the URL, I'll put that in the chat. And as you can see from, if I go to the top, sorry about that, you've got pretty much everything. So you've got banners, clients, categories, config, contacts. So we'll go with the articles. So I scroll down to content, got articles, and I'm going to click on get a list of articles. And what you'll see is it shows us all of the endpoints, which are these particular parts here. So this is one for get a list of articles. You can see for get a single article, you need to add the ID on the end, and to delete one, you need the ID, and to create an article, you can do some stuff there as well. So I'll take you through a few things. So if I go back to my Postman, that will be how you understand what you can do and what the URL, the correct URL is. Anyway, that's in the chat if you want to follow along with that. So back to Postman. So I've actually made a load before, but I will do one from scratch. Sorry, I'll just close these down so you guys can see it as well. So the first thing you're going to need to remember is to create a bearer token. So George did that in Joomla in his users, and there was another tab. Maybe I should show that, should I? Let me just log in, and then I'll share that with you guys as well. Can I log in? Can I remember my login? I can't remember my login. Phil, if you want to help me out while I'm talking, that might be better. Anyway, you go into your users, there's an extra tab, and it creates, you have to save your user, and then it creates a token. The type of token is a bearer token, which is what Joomla is using. So if I press plus on my, thanks, Gary's just given it to me. I'll show you that in a minute anyway. If I press plus on my get request, and I need to put in the URL. So I'm getting the URL from the document that I just showed you with the endpoints. So we're going to do get a list of articles. So I'll put this in the chat window so you guys can use the same URL. And I'm going to post it into my get. And then once I've done that, I will need to use my authorization. So it's just the second tab next to params is authorization. Again, you're going to need something, so I'll put that in the chat. That's the token. So if I change the type to bearer token, and then you can see I need to paste that token into the token there. So I've put that in the chat if anyone wants to copy and paste it. And then that probably is enough, isn't it, I think? No, it's not. What have I done wrong? George, shout if you can see that I've done wrong. Have I still got the access and everything like that? George has come up. And because of that, I can see my token, which is the right token. So let me just check Postman and then I'll switch back. Okay, that's working now. Okay, so that was a problem that we need to look at potentially. Might be a bug, I'm not sure. So back into Postman.
Yeah, it's working now. I got it.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, yeah, right. So anyone who's following along, if you hit send now, you'll get a response, which is basically a list of all the articles on this site. So if we now was to choose one particular article, so I'll have a look and I'll see there's one which is number 11. So now if I put a slash and then do 11, and then I do a send, it should bring back just that article. So I might as well just.
Can I ask why this is over? So for something like this, I know that you can push and pull, but it seems very similar to on this base level anyway that we're doing at the moment, like an RSS feed, like just on like a bit more pumped up.
An RSS feed generally only has some information like an image, maybe some body content and a title and the date. But this could have like the custom fields in it and lots of other information.
Is it a similar principle though, in the sense of the essentially what is
RSS feed normally comes out in XML and this is JSON, so slightly different. It's
RSS feeds don't have filtering of data.
Right. So
this does.
Right. Okay.
That's the biggest change for the list view to an RSS feed is that you can actually filter your data.
Great. Okay, that is super useful.
Plus, obviously, RSS is read-only, whereas obviously this has all the create and update capabilities too. But from just this list view perspective, the biggest difference is being able to filter data.
Great, thank you.
So let's go to one of the other endpoints. So now let's try and create an article. So you'll see that I need to copy and paste this API. I don't want the -d on the end in this case. So I'll copy that. And I will add that onto the end of my URL. Make sure there's not a double slash there. And because we're creating one, we need to know what's involved. So George has helpfully provided this, or someone has provided this JSON. So what we need to do in this case is go to the body.
Students.
And once you're on, if you see it's 1, 2, 3, the fourth tab is body. We'll change it to raw, and then we'll change the drop down from text to JSON. So I'll leave that there for a second if you're following along. So you just need to be on body, on raw, and then change the text to JSON. Then you copy and paste the JSON that George provided on the documentation. So it's for a view level. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. So I've copied and pasted that. Now I need to change this to post, or else it won't work. So now that I've done all of that, I can probably test it and cross my fingers. Error. Oh, right. So there is a problem where you try and create a new article which is already existing. So I'll give this a totally new name. So I'll call it Owen article, and I will just change the text to something as well. And there's a problem where when you send it, it doesn't like it because it's got the same category ID. So if I change this category ID now to 99.
Out of interest, can you change the title rather than the category ID for me?
Yeah. So it still has a problem, but if I change the category ID, this won't happen for you guys because you're creating it for the first time. Oh, it might do if you're copying the code. If I change it to something like 99. Yeah, so change the category ID, just make up a high number, and then when you do it, it should work. And as you can see at the bottom, it has worked, and Joomla has given back the response that it's created this and the information that it's used. So everybody got it working? Anyone not got it working and needs to wait or needs help?
I'm so going on a bug hunt now.
Yep, good, thank you.
Got it working.
You got it working? Cool. So I'll move on to the next part on the documentation, which is delete an article. So you can see I'm just going to copy and paste that, and I'm going to put that into the end. I'll make sure that I don't have 2 slashes. I need to put the article ID. I've just created number 12, so I'll use that one. So I put 12 at the end. And if I look back in the documentation, you'll see that for delete, we need to change it to delete. So I will go to the top and change post to delete. So I've got delete here. I've got my API reference from the documentations. I've got article 12 at the bottom because that's the one I just created. You should use the one that you created perhaps. And then you probably don't need any data in here, but it probably doesn't break it either. Maybe it does. Internal server error. So it probably worked and I've not noticed. So let's just check. Sorry, I should have shown you it appearing in Joomla actually. So
I tend not to bother with that. Just assume it works.
Yeah, just assume it works. Well, we can see my test here, category 101. I'm assuming that's the one that Sean created.
I created one that's my test. The alias was my test article. That's correct. Yeah.
And category is 101. So that's
I'm trying to delete it, but unsuccessfully.
Okay, cool. So do you want to talk us through your problem and we'll try and solve it?
I've just done. I was obviously haven't.
Did your one?
Something very basic. Something very basic.
Mine deleted.
See if it works now. It should work. In theory, is it still there? Has it gone now?
Let's have a look.
No, what have I not done? Delete.
So look, so you need to have delete at the top, and then this will need to have the article number at the end.
Yeah, I got that 101, which was the category.
So in your body, I've changed it to none.
Oh, hang on, you've put in the category ID there.
None. Yeah.
You said that was 101.
So now try it.
You said that was 101, Sean.
Has that worked?
No, it's the
you
ID
get a
of
response
the
or anything?
No, just.
No,
nope.
Sean. The number at the end of the URL.
It's category 101, so I've got category.
It's not category. It's so it's 13.
Okay, 13. So if I
13 at the end, yeah.
Right, there we go.
You get the article error like that, Owen, if you already deleted the article. If 12 doesn't exist.
Yeah, I know. I've already done it. Yeah.
Send. There we go. Yeah, resource. Oh, it says resource not found.
Oh, so you might have. So the first time that happened to me as well.
And so, thinking about the practical applications of this, on the basis of what Phil was saying about pushing to, so having a workflow and then having so you have a work site essentially, and then you push stuff to, this could be excellent for, so you can still have basically have the core content on one system essentially, and push the content to another, but still keep the main piece of content, the version or whatever, back on wherever the work server was. Is that right?
Yeah, so potentially you could have one bit of content and publish it to 5 websites,
Yeah.
An example could also be that you get. I had a client who they were doing highways maintenance, and we were able to get the highway maintenance news by the government, which is updated like all the time, and put that on their website. So they had like a live feed of M25's broken or whatever it is. So stuff like that you could use it for. You could use it to say, I've published an article, use this API to talk to the MailChimp API, and then send an email or something like that with the article content, or post it to social media or something like that.
So as long as you, sorry, this is a really basic, so sorry for forgive me for this. I think this was 101 in the discussion earlier. So essentially, as long as we've got the API for any external website, right, we can use it to push that content through this to core. Right, so as long as we've got the details.
Yeah, probably not in such a simplified way as we're using here in Postman, because you're going to get one API, call that, and then push it to the other one. But yes, you could do that. That's the.
But you could build it out, right? So as you were saying with highway agencies or something like that, you could say, right, M25, and go to these specific interesting.
Effectively, it allows you to do a one-to-many and a many-to-one relationship between the source and the website that's showing it. So one website can push to many websites, or many websites could
and then the
take information from many websites and then collate it, style it, and present it as their own.
And then the interesting point from years ago that was a problem was, and maybe it's one for George, but essentially because it's doing everything, right? Essentially, you could have user access across. It could push the user access across the 5 sites. So before, say for example, you had one site using, say, Community Builder as an example, as we do, right? But you have Community Builder on one site, and you go, oh shit, I want to set up another site, but now we've got a problem because we can't. It's more difficult to give those people particular access. That essentially you could just say, right, pass on that data, right? If you had one central.
You could make all of the users on every site if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Because with the endpoints here, you'll see.
That's amazing. That's such a big thing.
So you, as George was saying, you can kind of access everything.
Yeah.
So you can do contacts, you can do users, you could do menus. You could do messages. So you could message everybody on all 5 sites. And what you would want to do potentially is, like, if you were the highways agency, you would like to say to people, you can have my information on your website if you want, but you definitely want to give them. Because there's only one API key that they get, you wouldn't want to give them the ability to delete and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the API is published.
Specifically for user management, you probably want to actually think about using Joomla's LDAP plugin and have a centrally managed LDAP server or something like that, rather than specifically using the API for that sort of data sync, just because LDAP is literally built for user management across multiple sites. That is what it does. It both for outside of Joomla too, but you can do it. It's just not the best tool for the job.
Did you say LDAP?
Right. So LDAP is a light database protocol that allows that, but the other name that George hasn't used, which most people know it as, is single sign-on.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. I see. Yeah.
So LDAP's more than just single sign-on though. LDAP also does role assignment.
Yes, it does. But
LDAP allows you to achieve single sign-on, but it's more than just single sign-on.
Right, okay.
Active Directory is also a version of this, depending on if you're in a Windows background, everyone will use Active Directory. If you're not, then you
so essentially, this is so with this API protocol, the key thing that, when you said this at the beginning, the key thing is to understand the limitations and the risk that's involved. Right.
Yes. Okay. APIs are both the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of your website. It's like anything. With great power comes with great responsibility, right?
It's with great beard.
So really good.
Yeah. So I mean, yours isn't working. If I change this to 13, I'll see if it works for me. So it just comes back with an empty, George. But I think it's worked.
That's expected.
That's expected. So,
if you look at the status code won't be 500. The status code is going to be like, I can't remember. Like if you look at the status code response you've got, but generally when you delete an item, the correct response is an empty response.
Okay. Well, anyway, when we refreshed, we see that IT13 no longer exists.
Thank you.
I don't know. do you want me to go through creating a menu item? I've got an example for that, but in fact I will do, because there's something different about that. So on the create menu items, this stumped me for a bit, and the guys yesterday a bit. We've got this extra parameter app, and that basically is either going to be site or administrator. There's two options there. So if we create a menu, I'll just copy this.
That's basically referring to the front end or the back end of the website.
Yeah, well done, Gary, thanks. So yeah, because now Joomla allows you to make administrator menus as well as front end menus, you need to specify it. So I will do a site one, and I need to do post, because I'm creating. I need to change my body to raw, and if you're following along, you need to copy and paste that, but probably change the ID or something. No, it's probably all right. And I've got to make sure I'm on JSON, which I am. So let me see if that works. So alias exists menu, so I'll just change the title to another one or something like that. Menu type exists. So that's another possible problem, George. Is that right or not?
Yeah, you're not creating a menu item at the moment. You're creating a menu.
Oh, I'm creating a menu. Whoops. Yeah.
And the menu type of the menu has to be unique. That's the general Joomla thing.
And yes. Sorry, and I was trying to create a menu, so I'll change that to that. So now this one, the app needs to be changed to site, and then we'll need to copy and paste this, which is quite a lot more that you need for this one. But even so, it's a copy and paste job, so you should be able to work it out. It's obvious what some of the stuff is. And have I got a name?
You probably want to remove associations. You don't have a multi-lang site. Okay.
Okay, but yeah, I think it still works with it. Here's my title, so I'll change this. So I'll change that title, and then I hit send and see. There you go. So it's given me a response, so we know that that's worked. If we go and look in the back end, in menus, it's in main menu. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. So you see Owen's boring menu title, or Ian's boring menu title, or however you pronounce that weird word, comes up. And that's about it. I'm just going to start repeating myself if I show you any more than that, but hopefully by showing you the API, where to find it, you can see all of the possibilities. You can probably see how to use it. We've gone through pretty much create, update, delete, and list. So that's it. Over to someone else, I suppose.
Eoin, I dare you to set the site to offline from the API.
Set the site to offline from the API. Gary, you know I'm going to not be able to do that if I try and do that in front of everyone.
Okay, well, if I quickly share, this only take 2 minutes. If I share my screen. Yeah.
Well done, Eoin. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Owen. Well done. It was worth it last night.
Thank you.
So a really quick one. This is a form. This is on a Joomla 3 site. So it's just a very simple form, and I can put whatever I want in here. Category ID, I'm going to nick anyone that's already there. Language
Is that just a text string? Could you create a HTML field there and throw in a load of HTML?
I probably could, but I'm just going to carry on as
okay.
And then I'm going to do a been used, and then we've got miscellaneous data. So, and then hit submit. And what should have happened is it gets thrown across to the other site that we had, the beta 2 one. And if I go to content and articles, I've got to log in. Oh, that's going to be interesting. I was logged out. So let me try that one again when I'm actually logged in. So. And like all good things, it's not worked.
I was wondering, surely you don't need to be logged in. I was thinking, why?
No, that's interesting. Do you need to be logged in?
No.
No, you shouldn't be able to, you shouldn't need to be.
Is this an old demo?
Sorry?
Is this an old demo?
No, it's working until the meeting a little while ago.
It showed me about 6:30.
Yeah.
Or 6:10.
I've not merged anything since then, so that's on you.
Okay, so to make it work, this is the code. I'm not sure why it's not in this particular second, but there's not much involved in it. It's taking.
Can you make your editor full screen?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
So it's taking from Tassos's form. It's actually what I can do is I'll do a quick die. And then we
shout out to Marco Dings if he's watching this on video.
Yeah, no, this is just for you, Marco.
I'm wondering how much editing this video is going to need.
Oh, you can keep. So, and I'm going to put a print up here.
Is it a cat ID clash? What did you use for?
Oh, it could be. Yeah, no, it could be. So I'll do something totally different in a second, and we'll retest it. Oh, come on, it's got to not work, otherwise it's not a proper demo. It would just be a recording. Right, so if I push that up. So now if I go to here and go to category, and what we'll do is we'll try a totally different one, as you say. So,
but it must have gone through okay because you've got try and catch, right? So you're picking up any errors. So there was no error reported by the API in posting the content.
Hang on, let me just do the state one. Let's try a totally random number. It's a new title. Invalid response. Get more data. Interesting. And there you go. So it has made it across. So this is a new article, never done before. I caught it on the way. Yet more data. And if we go into the publishing, hello and hello key, and the languages will also be filled in as all. So that's coming from it was the category ID thing. So it's coming from, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, George? So it's coming from one
Don't
site.
worry, Phil, that'll be fixed in sometime in the future.
Yeah, so it's coming from a Joomla 3 site to a Joomla 4 site via the API.
George, a couple of questions. Versions. Does the API expose versions?
Does the API what, sorry?
Expose versions?
Your mic's really bad, Gav. Say again.
Versions.
What about versions?
Does it expose versions?
of Joomla?
Articles.
Of articles. God, did we do that? I think we. Oh, I don't remember anymore. We've definitely talked about. We've definitely talked about doing it. I just don't remember. Like, we talked about so much stuff. I generally don't remember if we actually finally got implemented or not. I think it did, but don't quote me on it.
So George, is adding things like versions and
Yes,
that,
there are content history routes. If you do /article/content history /ID, you'll see versions.
I was going to say, adding versions, would that have been a new feature or would that have just been a fix?
That would definitely be a feature.
Okay.
Like, most of the API stuff isn't going to change much from now. What might happen is that in some of the API endpoints, we'll add in extra properties to the existing routes where we're missing stuff. So far, we just did a first pass for the use for what, especially content. It was largely just what was useful or what was more proof of concept at the time. Most of the other ones were done more properly. So adding in extra properties and fixing the relations to be the correct relations between data. So you saw how I was linking together author with the user concept. Those kinds of things will get tweaked as we move through J4 beta into stable, but we won't be adding new endpoints from now. And there are new endpoints to be added for sure. We haven't covered everything on day one.
Did
4.1
bulk
will come.
actions get covered?
Bulk actions do not get covered in the initial draft. The
And-
intention is to.
And so
And the
when
reason for that is that when you start to do bulk actions, you have to deal with the concept of partially succeeded data, which is significantly harder to deal with. Not impossible, but it's harder to deal with. Drupal built their own standard for doing that, which I plan on using. But obviously, it's not so simple. As a result, I decided to leave it for like a 4.1, 4.2 kind of feature.
API 4.1 is that?
No.
And sorry, when's the I know Phil, you tell me about this all the time, and I'm sorry for when's the stable releases coming, or what's the timeline?
I never tell you when the stable of Joomla is because it's never actually written down. But ironically, tonight, I can't say anything more.
Oh, we nearly picked
Boo!
I am happy
Our
to
aim
commit.
our aim is to ship Joomla 4 this year. But it is an aim.
Yeah.
We all have lives. And with coronavirus, everything is crazy uncertain as it is. Yeah, I can't. And it also depends a huge amount on how extension developers find the upgrade process. We don't want to make the mistakes of 1.5 to 1.6. We've been liaising with extension developers relatively early. But that doesn't mean to say we've got that upgrade process nailed down to an art yet. As a result, yeah, we're going to keep trying to, we're going to keep working with people until we are happy with the upgrade process. So yeah, at the moment, hopefully this year, if extension developers start to tell us that they feel that there are issues, then we'll take a pause and take the time to get it right.
Sorry, it's like I told you, it's like a dumbass question. That's what I'm here for. It's like the lowest common denominator.
It's the obvious question. It's the obvious.
The only reason why I say
No,
this is as an end user, obviously, is for it sounds super exciting, and we're at crossroads at the moment about constant discussion with Phil about what we're choosing to do, and part of it is on what Joomla 4 does. So it's quite a knock-on effect in terms of, but it looks awesome, really exciting. So congrats. I look forward to it coming out.
I'm sure Phil's talked to you about workflows, Sean, has he?
He has talked to me about workflows.
I think it's the biggest thing for you, Sean. But I can see if they bring out Zoo 4, we upgrade to that. That will solve a lot of problems with the using Utheme 2. That will be a massive boost. And actually, the API gives the ability, if they introduce the API, that would allow us to upgrade to Joomla 4 more easily.
Yeah,
The interesting thing about workflows is you could use the API to build a form like Phil's built, and then you could say to, say, a content writer, just visit this URL and write the content. And if you're using workflows, then it obviously won't be published straight away. Well, even with the API, you could choose that, but then you could not give them login access at all if they didn't need it. And some people are not technical and would find that much simpler as a process.
That's the thing that really hit me today, that you can use it as a staging platform. So you can expose forms to people to write content, but it won't go on the main site. It's only on the staging one, and then that allows the editor to peruse, try stuff out. It allows the developers to change the templates and see how it will look with all the content, live stuff, but it's not affecting the staging one. It's not affecting the production one. And it gives that concept of staging and production to Joomla in a whole new way.
And there's one of the big things about something like an e-commerce website where it's constantly in use and people are constantly making purchases. It's really hard to do a staging site because the data gets out of sync really easily. Although you can move the files over without much of a problem, the users and the purchases and order history and everything like that is really hard to do. So this would possibly make that one step easier.
Definitely one of the things that's on production's roadmap going forwards is now we have web services as being able to do staging and production sites. I mean, it's not going to be a short-term feature. I mean, even if we decided tomorrow we were going for it, it would probably still be a good 2 years away. But like that concept of a proper staging site, the web services makes that significantly more viable than it's ever been.
I've got a question, George. Can we upload multiple articles at the same time? Like, I guess probably not using Postman. You'd probably have to do it for each or something, would you?
Yeah, you'd have to do separate web services. As I say, there's no batch functionality. To be honest, ultimately Joomla will still have to process them one by one anyway, because it needs to filter every single request that comes in. You can build something yourself, but ultimately you're still going to insert one by one because you still have to filter one by one, even if that processing's done server side. So there's not much value in it.
So George, sorry if I've missed this. In the architecture of this, how are third-party developers going to expand on the functionality of the API, or aren't they given that opportunity? Is it can they, for example, expose their extension through the Joomla API as a third-party plugin or something like that?
Yeah, so the way it's intended to work is that's why we've kind of got these plugins per kind of, I'm going to use the word content type, so articles, contacts, web links, all this kind of stuff, right?
Just add in their own plugin.
So they can add in their roots, and to deliberately make life easier and not make it too complicated, we're proxying all the requests through the backend model, so they don't even have to build a full MVC structure. That's probably the long-term place where it will end up going, but to help them implement, they can choose to basically utilize the models and validation stacks they've got in the administrator section already.
Right.
So they have to build a very small controller and view to decide basically what data they support, data structures they support. And when I say empty, I mean literally the only thing that we've got for content is 2 variables and some code to handle fields that can be cleaned up a little bit. And vice versa when you're so for these properties, yeah, what to say you don't do in the demo. But yeah, so yes, third parties absolutely should be fairly simple for them. It's been built to be simple for them.
And so, and again, it might be a dumb question. So, is your vision for this that say, for example, someone's developing like mobile applications, or you come into, say, for example, a website has an agreement with a third party, right, to co-host content, right? That they would use the API for that to push, or is that something completely different again?
Certainly, if you've got a mobile app to Joomla will be done through the API, yes. What was the other bit? Co-hosting websites.
Yeah, it's a similar thing really, which is like if you're co-hosting content, so a bit like the description that Eoin was saying earlier about the hire agency. I forget what it was. Hire agency, right? If you've got a company that is, I don't know, service stations, right? And they deal with service stations, but you've got an agreement that you'll provide the service stations with X data. You just use that API to push that data set to that people.
Web services are generally web services, if they're publishing data, are less about pushing. Like you can push, but generally web services, you're making requests to a web service. So generally what you'd have is, if you were trying to get all the information from all the different stations, you'd be pulling from those different sources.
Right. And is that, and with web services, so final question, is that the same as service? Is this the same tech basically as service workers? And Phil's laughing because I always asked him about service workers for like 2 years.
Absolutely nothing to do with it.
There was nothing to do with service workers. So it sits outside of service workers, where that's coming from a
service workers
browser.
are like a JavaScript thing for the browser that allows you to basically take offline images, do caching, that kind of thing.
Because you can download the whole site though for a service worker, right? Because Google were pushing out 2 years ago saying that this was going to be the big thing, and then it's not really gone as they said it was going to go.
It definitely is getting bigger and bigger. But yeah, I don't. So the thing about service workers is people very much hyped up this offline thing, but offline service work, like the ability for a service worker to view offline is only really relevant for static content like blogs and stuff. It's less relevant for things like, despite, at least to me, it's less relevant for things like shops, because you've got to make requests. You know, if someone wants to pay, ultimately they need an internet connection.
Or ACL.
Or what, sorry?
ACL.
Yeah, if you've got lots of different views for different permissions, again, it requires an internet connection because you need to authenticate and then load your updated, authenticated pages. It only works for something that's for something that's public and you view it. I mean, you can do it with authentication, but it's more complicated. You basically would have to have authenticated, downloaded your authenticated copy, and then your phone's got to accept that you've lost connection at some point. And
so you basically answered
your cache.
You can tell where I was going with this. So you basically answered the question, right? So you're better off stripping down, again, for a mobile-rich experience, you're better off stripping down to using the API to the bare essentials of what you really want people to get to from that experience, because obviously you should have a responsive website anyway, and then push out that very specific, or not push out, but have that very specific information on the API to be pulled down at a particular point.
It's perfect for like a mobile app or something.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant for
mobile app developments. APIs are perfect for inter-website connections. APIs are perfect, and there are definitely going to be times behind the scenes where APIs are also going to be useful. Like a lot of the stuff where Joomla does these kind of interconnecting plugin events can be replaced long-term structurally with APIs, right? You can imagine each component sits and presents an API and other components can go in. So like when you're trying to get contact and users to merge together nicely, you can imagine that one day could be an API. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but it's the concept of linking data types together. And that's like the 3 different kind of ways you can use APIs. It can be different applications, so mobile and website, or like headless CMSs is the buzzword that a lot of people are enjoying these days. You kind of, again, for blogs, you basically have Joomla doing your back end, and you build basically a static front end, compile HTML, and every time you build your new article in Joomla, you recompile your HTML front end, which makes it lightning fast. Yes, or a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah,
another way to do it would be if you have quite a large, complicated site, you could expose specific parts of the API to make very simple sites. So you could take just jobs, if you were advertising jobs, or in your sports, where you have lots of different sports, you could just do football. And you
honestly, I wish I had loads of money. I'll pay you all to do it right now.
But it would mean
it's so exciting. Literally, if you get this working, you've literally like solved 10 years of problems overnight almost. I mean, it really is like quite significant for
Yeah, it is.
like for so many people. I'd imagine who've got exactly the same problem. Amazing.
Yeah.
And another plug for Bugs for Fun at Home on a Saturday to fix those bugs.
Yeah, well, if I'm really good at it, I'll do it, but I'll probably make more problems.
You can write that.
Everybody does that. Like, took me a long time before I did that.
It's just users we need. We need people to use. A lot of the bugs are coming up. You know, obviously we're showing stuff to George, and he's going, "That's interesting." Well, this is exactly what we need. We need people to use stuff in situations and make more and more complex sites before they're practically, before they're live, and report the bugs, and then it will make it stable.
Count me in if I can do the thing.
George?
Absolutely. I mean, like, workflows has actually been, it was a large group of people, but web services has largely been a solo effort I've been doing for a while now, like over maybe like nearly 5 years, with some GSOC students along the way. Like, I've had several GSOC students do a lot of things, but like, how many I've had? 1, 2, 3, 4 GSOC students over summers. Google Summer Code. Google sponsors university students to do coding for open source projects.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
So I've had 4 students, and basically the stuff I've done. And then I should also delegate responsibilities correctly. That also Nick Dianopoulos of Akiba wrote the authentication system. The bearer token system comes from Akiba. He wrote it for himself in his Joomla 3 stuff and contributed to core for Joomla 4.
Luca, do you want to show us some stuff? I've been seeing Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, both of which I've used in the past.
I try.
Luca, you have a talk as well. If you want to mention about your talk on Saturday, so we all know about it, that would be helpful.
Okay, give me some seconds. Okay, I have 2 demos. The first one is about feed RSS from this website. We have news about Africa. There is a lot of feed source. Then I take the feed from this URL. Don't work. Okay. No, is okay from this. Okay. I take the text and I translate with Google Translator API. Then I create the article and I publish on these websites. The original article is in English, and on the website is in Italian. There are about 300 articles in these websites. All the article is translated and inserted automatically with API.
Awesome.
The code is in PHP, and it translates about 300 articles every day. The second demo is these websites. The idea is a cottage. Okay. There is an Arduino which is similar to Raspberry. Is no. Yes, is this board. Okay. Is a physical board, is a smallest. Okay. And there are no operating system, but is less energy requirement, and it have a code like C. This is the code, for example. This code take the temperature and humidity of two sensors in the house and external the house, and push it on Joomla websites. Okay. Then there are custom fields from repeatable custom fields from the every miserations. And then with custom article, I plot the graph.
That's super awesome.
So you created that graph in Joomla, in the actual article itself?
Yes, I write a simple override. No. No, wait, okay. File, open. Documents. Okay, this is the article core code. I start an override in this position. I read the custom fields, I pivot the values. I create 4 arrays for 5 for the values: temperature, humidity, internal and external, and timestamp. Then I do a for each code for put the values from custom fields in this array. Then I use chart JavaScript,
right? Okay,
chart.js to plot, and then create the JavaScript code and finish. There is no other.
You said it was that simple. It does. It sounds very simple, but in practice, it doesn't sound that. Oh, brilliant. That's cool.
A little code.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And this is the result. The third demo is a bit more complex. Is no. Okay, the idea is you register a user, and then you have a graphical representations of the users in real time, or near real time, every half minutes. Every users move the stick a bit. This is the dimension of the boards who do the API call. I think the API is very, very powerful. We need only to learn how to use.
That's awesome.
Sorry, I just got back from a beer run. What's that dial showing? Is that number of users on the site?
Yes, the number of users not is the number of users registered.
Oh, who've registered? Brilliant.
The idea is wait. No. Okay.
I love the idea. You could have like smart lights changing color depending on how many visitors you had on your website.
Yes, is another good idea. There is no limitation.
You could have like red flashes or something when somebody had an error on the page or some kind of problem with a form or something.
Yes, there is no problem. You can use what you want. The example with the humidity and temperature sensors is this small sensor, the board. The total price is €6. Okay, it's very cheaper, but it can do a very powerful demo from my speech. The idea is the ambient sensor, Arduino, and Joomla.
Nice. Joomla making its way into the IoT world.
Yes. When I finish the code, I publish it, and I can give you the URL.
Yeah, talking of IoT, that's the other thing I should have said. Of course, this gives Joomla the ability to do Alexa integrations and all that kind of stuff. That's the other web services use.
Yeah, so Brian's speech talk, was it talking websites and
no, Brian's stuff is more about reading out the content on your website as opposed to.
Who's doing that? Sorry, who's doing that? Because that's like a Pocket, Pocket app. That does that. It reads the content. I use text to speech a lot on dyslexic, so I use text to speech a lot. Who's doing the read out the content?
I think it might have been Pocket app that
Brian was talking about it. He was talking about it at the Joomla and Beyond presentation. Because one of the other things we're doing with Joomla 4 is trying to work on accessibility.
Oh right. Yeah, because I use Mac, like double speed text as fast as it will go. It's not very quick, text to speech, so it won't go that.
So trying to get some of these things working is very high on our priority list for
All
Joomla.
right, that's cool.
And make these things work better with CMS.
There's a video on that, Sean. If you want, we can find it.
I lost the Zoom meeting. Where are you?
You probably want to do the tab things. What is it? Shift tab or whatever.
So many times tonight.
Control tab.
It's the little bar that you need to find.
Yeah, if you go,
your massive beard, Luca,
if you hover to the bottom of your screen, hover to your bottom of the screen, or where you're doing the screen share. The
problem comes when you've got two screens.
Yeah,
the problem comes.
Yeah, you need to turn off the screen share. That'd be the quickest thing to do because it pops right back up in the middle once you've got it. Hover down to the bottom of the screen.
It's the bar that you need to find. As soon as you stop sharing, then you get your Zoom back.
I can, if I share my screen, it will knock yours off, and then I can just. Has that knocked yours off?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, Luca. Thanks.
Yeah, so where was that talk at? Where was the talk at? The
J and Beyond. They're all on the internet now.
Oh, J and Beyond.
If you want.
Yeah, brilliant. Take great interest in that.
It was a very good talk, actually.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, enjoyed that.
Well, thank you for that. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
so
thanks
George,
to George.
How might that work then? So with Alexa integration, what could you dictate articles?
It would be so a way Alexa works is you basically deploy specifically Alexa. Rather, I don't know exactly how Google and stuff work because I haven't looked. I've got Alexa, so I know how it works. You deploy lambdas onto AWS.
Yeah.
But that would allow you that your lambdas could query your website for information. So you could imagine effectively searching through your article content, that kind of thing. Like for Q&A stuff, it could be you could build up specific search terms, right?
I mean, would you need to create a skill for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Like the standard Google searches and stuff, you'll come up or you don't come up, right?
Yeah.
That's just the lottery of whether you're. I assume whether you're at the top of Google. I assume that's how it works when you search for things in Alexa. But in terms of just if you want specifically your site, then you need a skill. But then
what do you mean? What do you mean a skill?
So with Alexa, for each kind of integration you have, it's a skill. So it's a skill to translate, or it's a skill to. If I want to add stuff to my shopping list, I tell open bring and add X to my shopping list, or open Spotify and play this music, or open.
Yeah, for a while you had to ask certain app name to give me some information, and it was just like nobody could work out all the things that you had to specifically say, didn't it? So now I think a lot of the skills are you're just able to ask it, and if it understands the question,
Still not really. You have to default searching is fine. You can set default shopping provider and default music provider. So like I don't have to specifically tell it to open
Spotify. Seem to have got around it. You don't seem to have to ask. Like I've got Harmony remote control. I think that I still have to say, ask Harmony to change BBC channel, whatever. I don't even know what language you have to use.
I still have to get it to open up most of my non-default things. The one thing I get for free effectively is I've overridden Amazon Music with Spotify, and I've overridden I don't know what else have I done, and just general searches and stuff, so like Google Translate and stuff like that sometimes when I'm using it, but most like for shopping, which is my other main use aside from Spotify, is you got to tell it to open.
Maps was always my one. Override Apple Maps with Google Maps.
Guys, I'm going to shoot off, but that was absolutely awesome. Thanks, I love that. That's much better than going through law, which is what I do every day. No. It's like, trust me, this is much more interesting. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Well, I think you get quite a lot from it because there's a lot coming, as it were.
No, that's amazing. Like I said, it resolved like a 10-year, like it instantly turns like what you can do, like for like with, a team of people, you can basically what would take 20, 30 people now, you can do with a team of 6.
Yeah.
If you can do it right once you've got it set up, that's quite very interesting indeed. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time and input, and I love that. And I love that sensor, by the way. That was really cool. They're doing the stuff. So good luck with your presentation, Luca, on the weekend. Thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me join in.
Thank you for coming.
Delight. Thanks for organising it. Really appreciate it. In all seriousness as well, like anything I can do to support Joomla, Phil, obviously, like I'm happy to sit there and this is like, I like playing around with things, but anything I can do to support, let me know. Not sure what, but always happy to support.
We'll find something.
You can write the API documentation now that you know how to do it.
What? Mate, you'd just be dealing with like all the requests to go, this doesn't work. Spelling errors and everything. You don't need that. You don't need that in your life, trust me. All right, guys, good night. See you later. Bye.
I think I'd like to echo Sean's thanks to George. Thank you for taking the time not only to do the talk, but also for doing a lot of the writing of the code. A big thanks to Alex as well. You've been really, as well as being really friendly, you've been really helpful. George says you've done a hell of a lot to help with the testing of the API, so thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your link to your Joomla to Joomla plugin, which looks pretty cool.
And
thank
a Postman collection.
Say that again.
And he's got a Postman collection of all the API endpoints.
Yeah, he shared it as well. Yeah,
I'm still here. No problem.
Yeah, thank you. I'll have a look. So, does that mean we can just import that collection into Postman? Is it?
Yeah, but Brian corrected, and he made the pull request. I had to correct the collection because in the first place it wasn't working well. So I had to make the right format. Now it's working normally. Normally it should work.
It's working now. Okay, perfect. That's really useful. Thank you, and thank you to Luca as well. It was a really interesting chat. Never seen.
Luca's presentation with Arduino was cool. Maybe I will buy an Arduino too, because I have a Raspberry Pi 4. But I don't have an Arduino. I don't know how it works. Maybe I should give it a try.
Connect with Luca. He seems like an expert.
Luca is an expert. I will learn with. Hi, Luca.
Peter Martin loves all this kind of stuff as well. Luca, do you do anything with Peter?
No, I know Peter, but I didn't spoke to him. I saw his presentation, but I know he's a Linux lover, but I don't know.
Yeah, he's well into IoT and Arduinos and.
Oh yeah. And... That's cool.
Well, I'm going to have to go as well. So it's good to see you all.
just wondered.
Everybody is leaving one after one.
Well, I've only been back for 10 minutes.
We've officially been in the pub for 30 minutes.
Where I live, it's 4 p.m. So it's only 4 p.m. where I live.
No, it's 9:30 here, and we usually have to leave at 9. We have
okay, yeah, that's okay, no problem.
Yeah, the kick
8 o'clock here.
Oh, and are you going to be posting the recording of this? Because I obviously missed best part of 2 hours of it.
Yeah. So I don't know if it might be worth re-recording it. I don't know. Gary and Phil can give me a steer on that, because there was a bit of like a, oh God, what's gone wrong sort of stuff, and messing around trying to work it out. So perhaps it'd be a bit smoother if we just started again and did a recording, which probably won't take too long. Anyway, we can talk about that after. You think it was all right? Okay.
Yeah, I think
we're probably
could maybe cut out some of it, which was just a little bit boring, a little bit backward and forward. But in general, there was good conversation, good points, good trying to work through it.
Fine, yeah. Then we'll just edit it. Andrew, I'll probably try and do it this week at some point.
Yeah, so it'd just be good to catch up with that.
I don't know if I've got your email address, but you can get mine off Phil, or if you're on our
subscriber of the YouTube channel, Andrew.
Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the email list, and perhaps we'll just email everyone with the video.
I have subscribed to the email list about 4 or 5 times. Phil and Gary just go in and take my name off.
I'm the same.
Still not had an email from us.
I think we should have a whip round and get Gary a new microphone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's because he doesn't want to be recognised. He's not showing his face and he's disguising his voice.
Yeah, it's clearly not even Gary.
Well, I mean, 1 minute it works, the next minute it doesn't. I don't know what.
No, trust me, most of the time it's not worked tonight.
More like 80-90% not. Sometimes it is crystal clear, but it's just not more often.
Right. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming, David and Ahmed. Ahmed, you haven't said anything, but thanks for coming. Don't know if he's there. All right, George, I'll stay on because you wanted some help.
So Luca, what is the link for your presentation on Saturday?
I'll say goodbye.
I think somebody. What?
Yeah, Luca, have you got a link? Put it in the chat.
The link for your presentation on Saturday.
Is Joomla 4 and the API. Very simple.
Is there a way? How do we get?
Yeah, but
I shared the link. Give me only
share
1
the link
second.
on the chat, please.
The problem is the speech is in Italian.
No problem. I will watch what I can. I don't understand Italian, but hopefully I will understand the code or what you will show.
Okay. If you want, next time we can translate the speech in English.
You can use the API to do it.
Yes.
Nice catch, Eoin.
Cool. Well, guys, I think
I'd definitely be interested.
Yeah, George would be interested. We can teach George a bit about the API, to be fair. Slacker.
Sorry.
George, you want? I'm not in any rush, guys. If you guys want to hang around and talk or anything, George, you want to troubleshoot the thing that you say? Don't forget to join us on the third Tuesday of every month. Details are in the description below. Next month, I'll be teaching people how to build a Joomla 4 module from scratch. So come along and let's all get better at Joomla together.